the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. And today I am lucky enough to be with Ella Ritchie. Ella, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you do?
Yes, thank you, Allison. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you. My name is Ella Ritchie. I am the founder of Stellar Communications Houston, and we are a nonfiction book publishing, marketing, and PR company for self-publishing authors, which means memoirists, business book leaders, nonprofits, and corporations, sometimes families as well.
All right, that's amazing. Can you tell me what the difference is between marketing and PR for nonfiction versus fiction?
Well, we are solely a nonfiction team, and so I can speak to the nonfiction. We are really best for people who really want one of two purposes. They either want to leave a legacy, or they want to leverage their books as tools for their businesses. So all of our marketing and PR efforts are about aligning their business goals or their personal goals with their book as a tool.
And if they're aligning their book as a tool, one of those things might be trying to get speaking gigs. Is that true?
Speaking is a big part of it. Yes. And I have noticed that most of the people who approach us for a book project are not quite set up for speaking. And so a part of our role is getting them getting their mission in order and their message in order so that they are not only ready for a book, but that they're ready for speaking engagements.
All right, let's go to mission. So what is a mission? How do you define mission? How do you recognize that somebody's mission is a little fuzzy?
It's usually a little fuzzy at first, but a good ghostwriter, a good book coach, a good publisher is going to make sure that your mission is fully defined for the book. A mission can be any purpose, again, for your personal or your business. Most people have a very lofty vision, a lofty mission, which I love. Our job is to connect, the dots from where they are to where they want to be. And a book can absolutely help you get there.
Right. So I meet so many people on the street, wherever I go to meetings and conferences, and they have nothing to do with writing, but the people will say, "Oh, I want to write a book." So what does that person start with? Like, they have the book idea in their mind. They have a vision of what that book can do for them, but they don't have those dots. They don't even know what the dots look like. They're clueless. So how do you take that person from I want to write a book to, okay, let's write that book?
Good question, because I get that a lot. I get a lot of people who say, I have a great book idea. But most people never actually take the time to get it in writing. And so my very first piece of advice is accountability. If you are serious about any goal, particularly a book goal, which could take years, you need some kind of accountability in place right off the bat. And that really separates, the people who are dreaming about it from the people who are very serious about it. When somebody is willing to put accountability in place at the start, that's when I know that they're serious. So it can look, it can be in the form of, some kind of public deadline for their book. I've had authors who post on Facebook their very public goal, which is, I think, very aggressive and ambitious for themselves, because it's very humbling. But again, a book coach, a ghostwriter, I love ghostwriters. They really do a great job of keeping your toes to the fire and making sure that it gets done in, a year's time, 2 years time, whatever timeline, is makes sense for your lifestyle.
So let's talk about timeline. I've written a book, and now you're going to help me publish it, market it, represent me. You're going to help me get my mission and my goals oriented to the right direction. Okay, so what happens now? I'm going to say, Ella, you're my person. What happens? How does that work?
So it's a fairly long process. It can be sped up, but I advise authors that, for best quality, for your best legacy book, your best tool for your business, you really want to give it the space that it deserves. And so a publishing process is 5 steps, is what I call it. It's a 5-step process. And so that process is you first need to get it written down. That can take as long as you need. So I typically advise authors it'll take about a year to 2 years, depending on if you have help or not. And then after that, you still need to go through several more steps. There's graphic design that takes a few months typically. There is printing, which takes a couple months. There's distribution, which takes a little bit of time to get in order. And then your marketing process has 6 aspects to it. So it's its own system. And the marketing begins, I would say, at your idea. It begins at the very beginning. And it can, it extends for a lifetime of your book. But I would say your most concentrated efforts are throughout your writing process through launch day, and then for another 6 months past launch day. It's a very concentrated period of time. But then, of course, it's an ongoing effort over the lifetime of your book.
All right. So we need to build a buzzworthy book. What's a buzzworthy book? Like that.
So that's step
now
one.
We got a buzzword in the buzzworthy.
Yes, that's step one. That's step one. So it's very important to start with a marketable manuscript. In order to have a successful marketing campaign, you need to have a marketable manuscript. And most manuscripts that I receive are not quite marketable yet. And that's okay. They're really good stories. They're great stories. They're told well. They're composed in a way that makes sense. But our job is to make it marketable, meaning that your readers will be compelled to read it, will want to read it, and will want to tell other people about the book. And so in order to make your manuscript marketable, again, our first step is talking about those just fundamentals. What's your mission? What's your target audience? What's your promise to the reader? That's one, that's really big that a lot of authors haven't quite thought about until we start talking to them. What are your calls to action for your reader? What are your goals for your launch? How are you going to measure success? What lead magnets will you build into your book that will align with your marketing efforts? And all of these things, when you tie them together and build them into your manuscript, you have a really marketable book that really stands out apart from your competitors.
All right, that is such great advice. And by the way, that was perfect for fiction as well as nonfiction.
Yes.
There's really not that much difference. And one of the things I see with fiction writers is that they don't approach the book as a business. They don't approach their writing as a business. And when you have a nonfiction book, particularly if it's from a business author, they understand the business side of things. And so they're able to get into that mindset a little bit faster. But embracing that idea that you are on an entrepreneurial journey when you are a writer. And that spirit of what you need to do is definitely something that helps. So how about book launch? What's the big secret for book launch? And now that, we have platforms, like so many people are online, we have bookstores, we have restaurants, but what do you see as the leading edge of a book launch?
Well, I do want to start with the expectations. I think that's very important first, to talk about expectations, because we all want to be a bestseller. And, there's a lot of talk about being a best-selling author, and most clients who approach me want to have a best-selling book. And so I start off by first talking about what it means to be a bestseller. There are, a lot of misconceptions today. And that's why I really appreciated a writer who recently published her book on Amazon, and she got on social media. She got on LinkedIn and said, I am listed as a hot new release. I've sold 4 copies. And most people don't realize that 4 copies can, you know, can give you that kind of categorization on Amazon. The truth is that it's very difficult to make sales. Sales on Amazon, on anywhere. It's very challenging. And so I start off by talking to authors about, you know, the reality of how difficult it is to make sales, what it means to be a bestseller. A lot of them want to be a New York Times bestseller, which would mean about, you know, 3,000 sales in 1 week. That's really challenging for even, you know, a popular business person. That's hard. But it is possible. It's possible to, you know, to reach those goals. It's also possible to be a bestseller on Amazon with very few sales. Actually, it's possible to do these things. And so, to me, a book launch, a successful launch, is understanding what your goals are, um, how to accomplish those goals in that week so that you feel satisfied. But you know, but it's really about giving to your audience. And so, what we usually talk about is, you know, is a hard launch good for you, or is a soft launch good for you? Those are two different things. Um, you know, which one is right for you and for your audience?
Well, that's great. It's such great advice. And it is true that people navigating the market, the writing part is, to me, always the hardest part. You know, it's getting your butt in the chair and holding yourself accountable and getting 100 to 1,000 words on a page a day. That's not easy. You know, you're an audience of one at that point. And so you might have an idea of what your audience is, but you're writing to this void of a computer screen or pen and paper if you're super old school. And so, you know, looking at that off in the distance, you know, sometimes it feels surreal that it's there. Once you get to the point where you can put the end on a page, you're like, wow, okay, now I need to do all this stuff. But that's not really the case. It's building it from the beginning, right? You're building your audience from the beginning. So not only do you have an image of the ideal reader, the one who's sitting in a chair holding your book, but then you have the steps of how you're going to get it into their hands. And that is just constantly a challenge for everybody. So we have the print and online media markets. How do people navigate that? What's some advice about that?
So when we're talking about publishing, you know, we talk about distribution. We are, you know, at a time where we have incredible empowerment as authors, and so we have these huge distributors at our fingertips now, you know, who can take our books and get them out there on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Target, anywhere we want them almost. And so, yeah, it's actually a pretty simple process of taking this technology and getting as far as we want with that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We have people that just stick with Amazon, and then we have the other avenues. Ingram Sparks comes to mind. And do you, as a company, do you use those services, or do you just do everything independently?
I do use those services, and I am very, I'm a very big advocate of using wide distribution and not putting all of our eggs on Amazon, although obviously they are a wonderful service for us. But I pair Amazon with Ingram Spark for wide distribution so that, we can reach our readers in every format that's best for them. And then with our audiobooks, we do the same. We use ACX, which is the Amazon audiobook company. And then we also use Findaway Voices for wider distribution as well.
Oh boy. Yeah, audiobooks is something I haven't even scratched the surface of, other than podcasts. So that's podcast booking. There you go. That's write your book on podcast. So anyway, Ella, what else are we missing? What's something that you can leave our listeners with?
You know, I want them to know that in book marketing, it is as lengthy and involved as a process as book publishing. And so it's very important to give it its own budget and its own space and its own energy and time. And so our 5 steps of publishing I've already outlined, but in marketing there's also its own steps. And so just very quickly, in marketing, there are 6 aspects to marketing, and I'll just say them very quickly. The first one is to build a buzzworthy book, which you've touched on. Our second one is to reach your circle of influence. Third one is to prep your online presence. The fourth one is to navigate print and online media. Fifth one is to launch your book. And then the sixth one is to keep the momentum. And all of these aspects need to tie together and coordinate for one successful launch.
Well, Ella Ritchie, this has been such an exciting conversation. How can people learn more about you and Stellar Is it Stellar Communications? What is it? Stellar?
Yes. Stellar Communications Houston. We are based in Houston, but we work with authors all over the states. You can find out more about me at stellarwriter.com. If you go to /blog, you can subscribe to my monthly book marketing and publishing tips.
Oh, that's so exciting. Someone else to add to my rotation. Love it. All right. Ella, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
Do you like to go fishing?
I like to watch people go fishing.
It's like sitting in the golf cart watching somebody else play golf. All right. And are you an index card fan? I need to make this clear. Are you an index card fan?
Not only am I a fan of them, but I was actually published in Parents Magazine for a parenting tip where I had, I had maps and directions, on a little index card ring. Obviously, this was before, our cell phones today and Google Maps and all that. But yeah, I was actually published for my love of index cards.
That's great. That's great. And do you have a favorite pen that you like to use?
We do. I got it at a nonprofit event and I'm obsessed with it. And I talk to people about it in meetings. It's a very unhealthy obsession with my one pen.
All right. That's super fun. All right. Any clue? What is it? Is it a specific type of pen?
It's just this little, it's a very elegant pen actually. And I've Googled it and I found it. I plan on buying a bunch of them for me and my clients. So, but yeah, it's just a very smooth ballpoint pen.
Awesome. Well, Ella Ritchie, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you, Allison.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Allison out. Woo! We're all done.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Ella Ritchie is the founder of Stellar Communications Houston, a premium nonfiction book publishing, marketing, and PR team for self-publishing nonfiction authors. She's been delighted to publish and promote memoirists, business leaders, nonprofits, families, and corporations. When she's not on Zoom calls with her spectacular team, you can find her scribbling strategy, sipping black coffee, and listening to jazz music. Discover more about Ella at stellarwriting.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org. Until next time.